Hello, welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 Part 2, where I cover episodes 11 through 20 of Season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy. So if you have not seen up to the very end of Season 2, so all of Season 2, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So anyway, I was just looking at the Lower Decker Funko Pops that I have back there and realizing that if they release Prodigy ones, which I don't think they have, I'm not sure, I'll probably get some of those too. I'm sure they have a Murph plushie or something out there. I mean, they must, because he seems like such an obvious merchandising opportunity. So maybe I could get one of those. You know what I really want to get? I wanted to get one of those Moopsies from Lower Decks. Just that one episode, they did have some of those out there, little plushie toys. But anyway, not here to talk about toys. Here to talk about Prodigy Season 2. So, now that I've seen the whole season, I will say, I will stand by my statement that I made earlier that I don't think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, as many people have been saying. People have been ranting and raving about this season like it's the best thing ever. Some people calling it one of the best seasons of modern Trek. Yeah, I don't think I'd go that far. I do like it overall, though. I am not even sure I'm prepared to say it's better than Season 1. It's hard to compare them because Season 1 had a rough start and it was a bit more inconsistent overall. It had more bad episodes, but the last 4 episodes, the ending of Season 1, I think is better than anything in this season. So it's rough. It's hard, difficult to compare it. It's like apples and oranges, but ultimately, I think that they're kind of on par, and I would probably have to rewatch Season 1 before I tried to determine which one I like better, because they're pretty equal in my mind. And I did really enjoy Season 1, which means I also really enjoy Season 2. As I said, I don't think it's perfect. In fact, I am willing to state that I liked Star Trek Discovery Season 5 definitively better than this season, which seems to be very different than the common opinion out there, but that's okay. I don't always have to match common opinion. But yeah. So I did really enjoy the season. I did think overall it was great. There were some really good things about it, particularly the way they used Wesley Crusher. I think it was great. It was great seeing Chakotay involved in the main storyline again, because he only had a cameo in Season 1. And it was great seeing the Chakotay and Janeway dynamic once again. Seeing them reminisce was very satisfying. The characters were used very well. Dal in particular had a lot of character growth this season, as did Gwen. And so, yeah, and some of the other characters like Murph, Rocktop, maybe not Jenkin Pod. He's kind of still the same. But yeah, and Zero, definitely. They all had character growth this season and were used very well. Of course, I think they were also used well in Season 1, but they continue to be used well, and they continue to grow, which is a sign of a very, very good show. Now, as I'm about to get into, I am not that okay with the time travel logic used. I think this is one of the more flawed examples of time travel being used in Star Trek. Personally, like, it didn't, as I said, it didn't tank my enjoyment of the season. I'm not going to declare the time travel logic completely ruined the season for me, which it didn't, but it did damper my enjoyment of it, and I think it's part of the reason why I'm not going so goo-goo crazy over it like many people seem to be doing. But, it was still a solid season. So let's go ahead and jump into the episode. So we're starting with episode 11. And I already talked about in the previous video about how really they should have split this season in half instead of dropping it all at the same time, but it is what it is. So, episode 11 is the last flight of the Protostar, part 1, where we get the crew, the Prodigy, or the Prodigies, I should just call them, meeting grumpy old Chakotay that has been stuck on this planet, and we learned that Birdman or Bird Person had died during the intervening 10 years, and he's become very grumpy and a curmudgeon, and he thinks he needs to hide the Protostar away from Starfleet, otherwise it would get destroyed. And so when the kids show up and like, oh no, don't worry about the weapon, it's all good, Starfleet's found the cure for it, you can bring it, we need to bring the ship back in order to restore the timeline. And he's like, oh, grumpy, I don't care. And so we get the storyline where, the kids are left out in the storm, so Janeway hologram convinces Chakotay to let him on the ship, and then he's still being all grumpy. But then, Dal gets caught up in the storm, and then instantly Chakotay is all great again. It's like, you saved me, now I'm a good guy, now I'm all back in the game. I mean, okay, so maybe it was a little gradual because they did, they were on board for a little while and they were sort of, working on him, and he was starting to realize what it's like to have a crew again. But it still felt really sudden. It did feel really sudden the way he's like, oh, I am now all in Starfleet again. Now I'm willing to risk my life to save you all. And whatever, but it's fine. It was the whole thing about him being a grumpy curmudgeon was a bit of a cliche as well. I feel like this is a storyline I've seen before in many other cartoons, many other times, but it was enjoyable. It was still fun seeing them, Chakotay and them trying to work on Chakotay. So I'll give this last flight of the Protostar Part 1 a 7 out of 10. So, next we move over to episode 12, the last flight of the Protostar Part 2. This sees them come up with a plan to use the antimatter they found in order to get the Protostar flying again, so they're have hope. But it involves turning the Protostar into a sailing ship that sails the cloud in order to get in the middle of a storm. And so they jump on top of the ship, which seems to be a lot smaller than it should be. Once they're on top, I think they got the scale a little bit wrong, but whatever, who cares? So, but the whole thing about them using the Protostar as a sailing ship, and they're having the rudders and the sails and being tied off by Captain. I mean, this is a cartoon, granted, but I don't know. This is a bit more silly than what I'm really willing to go with. And I think it's just as silly and cartoonish and childlike as anything, as the most childlike, silly, cartoonish stuff they did in Season 1. So I don't agree with the statement that Season 2 is not as for kids or as cartoonish as Season 1. I think it is just as much, and this is a prime example of that. This is just goofy for me. This is one of the things I just have to suspend disbelief and be like, it's a kid's show and just go with it, which I am willing to do for this show because it is in fact a kid's show. But this is rather silly. But anyway, so there was an interesting moment in this episode though when Dahl was trying to he got distracted and almost hit the rock, and he was trying to fix the rudder and couldn't do it, and Gwen had to take over, so Chakotay had to remove him from it and put Gwen in charge, which is interesting. It's interesting, the episodes that follow the lesson that Dahl takes from this. He doesn't get spiteful or angry at Gwen or Chakotay. Instead, he sort of realizes that he takes it as a learning curve, as a lesson, and realizes he still has much to learn. So that was very interesting. I did like that aspect of it. But anyway, they collect their deuterium or whatever, and they're able to get the Protostar flying again. Chakotay's back into it, so they blast off into the stars. So, my rating for the last flight of the Protostar Part 2, I'm going to give this one a 5. I'm sorry, but the whole sailing the starship thing and sailing the clouds was just goofy for me. But otherwise, it was an interesting episode. But yeah, I'll give it a 5. Anyway, next episode 13, a Tribble called Quest. Nice play on words there, playing on the 90s band A Tribe called Quest, if you didn't know where that wordplay comes in. Because as far as I know, the Tribble's actually not called Quest. I believe they named it Dribble. But anyway, or at least the one that Rocktop created. Anyway, this is a Tribble episode, and we gotta have Tribble episodes every once in a while. Thankfully, they did not at all reference that dumbass short trek, which, as far as I'm concerned, is not part of canon. Now, unfortunately, they also didn't directly contradict it, which I wish they did. But, baby steps. I gotta take what I can get. Anyway, because fuck that short trek. Just fuck it out of existence. Anyway, pardon my language, kiddies. Anyway, so, a Tribble called Quest. So we get Tribbles, and we have mean big Tribbles with teeth, because there's a Klingon sort of messing with Tribbles. I thought they annihilated Tribbles. Didn't they wipe out their homeworld? I guess they were brought back to life. And when Cisco and the crew brought them back from the future, I don't know. I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. But it was kind of goofy. Like, it was kind of a silly side quest. And the Klingon scientist... It is good to get a Klingon scientist, by the way. But, that was kind of... Yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of goofy. But I did like... And of course, they had to create another merchandising opportunity because Murph is more of becoming like a main character with a personality, and it's got a different shape. So they're like not as cute as they were in season 1, and they have more of a being an actual character. So we need another person. We need another merchandising opportunity, another cute little fluffy thing. And what's more cute and fluffy than a Tribble? And we get one that looks like Rocktop. I wonder if there's actually rocks on it, if it's just fall fur, just pink fur. But anyway. So, I mean, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But it is interesting. I do like, and this kind of feeds into the overall theme of the season, how Rocktop made a mistake, accidentally got her DNA mixed up with the sample that created this Tribble, and how she really didn't like it. And it's like, it's my own mistake staring me in the face, and that made other people doubt her capabilities if she was able to actually, make the genetic modifications in order to make the Tribbles smaller and harmless again. And I can't remember exactly what happens, but I think the little Dribble does something to help them save the day. I don't know. This episode's not that particularly memorable to me, but it made Rocktop realize that sometimes your mistakes or different variables is just a different way to come to a different conclusion, and it can have different effects than what you think, but it doesn't mean you were wrong to do it that way, which is a theme that will repeat itself later in the season. So I think that's a theme that this season is overall sticking to. So that's good. I like that. That was interesting. But other than that, this episode's pretty throwaway, so I'll give A Triple Called Quest a 6 out of 10. Anyway, so the next episode is episode 14, Cracked Mirror. We just had to do, as soon as I saw the mirror in the title, I'm like, it's going to be another Mirror Universe episode. Not that Prodigy has done one before, but I'm sorry. I'm sick of the Mirror Universe. I think it's been done to death. It's mainly... In Modern Trek, I think it was just Discovery that did it, but even so, it's like I've kind of had enough of the Mirror Universe. And so anyway... Yeah, so this episode ends up being like another take on the Voyager episode Shattered. In fact, Chakotay, who was the main character in that episode, even brings it up. It's like, oh, this is like something similar to happen to me. But in that case, it was the ship was shattered into different timelines. But in this case, the ship is shattered into different alternate realities. So it's also similar to, well... It's kind of like a mix between Parallels and Shattered. Yeah, it was. I don't think it was that effective though, because especially, and maybe, maybe this was intended to come out before Discovery Season 5. I'm not sure if the cancellation affected that and pushed this back further, but Discovery Season 5 had an episode that kind of imitated Shattered, and it did a much, much better job. It was an amazing episode that tied into the character stories, tied into the overall plot. Was like a great way to pay homage to the show that came before. This was just useless. It didn't really serve a purpose, and they spent most of the time in the Mirror Universe, which I had not eager to see. I was not impressed with. And also, why? So I was expecting to spend more time with Rocktop and Zero, who are in this, went to a different deck, and it had like those people who were imitating the original crew from the first season, and they were saying, we'll take you to Captain Tuvix. So No, don't reference Tuvix. Oh my god. Don't do it. Don't fucking do it. But anyway, so we go to the Mirror Universe and we get the evil version of Chakotay and Janeway and the Terran Empire. Question. Didn't the Terran Empire fall like 50 or so years ago, or 100 years, or however long ago it was, by the time of Deep Space Nine? The Terran Empire didn't exist anymore because they were conquered by the alliance between Cardassians and Klingons. Don't you remember this? Don't the writers of this fucking episode remember this? And so are we meant to believe that the Terran Rebellion succeeded and they just reformed the Terran Empire and were able to get all their technology and power back? Because I was thinking about that, and that's pretty goddamn far-fetched. This is only, 14, 15 years since we last saw the Mirror Universe? Something like that? Maybe 16? I don't know, something like that. And, no. The Terran Rebellion wouldn't be able to reform themselves, so did everyone just forget? Now, I got some headcanon, and I'm sure this is what, apologists for this episode, or people who would like to make excuses, would say. But I'm doing it in my head to preempt that, to be fair. So, the way this could make sense is that this is a different alternate reality. So maybe this isn't the exact Mirror Universe that we saw in Crossover. Maybe it's a different version, a different alternate reality that's like the Mirror Universe, but in this reality, the Terran Empire was never defeated by the Klingon-Cardassian alliance, and so they're still around. okay, I can buy that, I guess, but they didn't mention that, so it just seems like they just forgot about the DS9 episodes. But I'm sure they could, if anyone brings it up, they could just say, "Oh no, this isn't the exact Mirror Universe. It's just another universe is similar to the Mirror Universe, but the Terran Empire is still around." But okay, fine, whatever. I'm not too caught up on that one point. I'm willing to go with it. But I don't want to see the Mirror Universe, and I'm not interested in it. And having the evil whale in Cetacean Ops was so dumb. And just the evil Chakotay and the Agonizer Booth again, and it's just like, oh god, the evil Janeway. And oh yeah, of course, the evil Chakotay had a goatee. Like, we haven't got this reference drilled in to fucking death already. Oh, I'm sorry. For the kiddies. But the kiddies wouldn't even get the reference of the goatee. So why is it for... I don't know. It's just nostalgia baiting member berries, like in the same ones that we've already seen like a billion times before. So I'm sorry. I am not impressed by this episode. It's funny because it seems like online that the reception to this episode is very well received and a lot of people seem to really like it. I'm not one of them. I didn't like this. It seemed like a lesser version of Shattered, especially after getting a better version of Shattered in Discovery Season 5. Now we get a lesser version of Shattered and just a means to rehash the Mirror Universe. I just hate it. I hate it. So my rating for Cracked Mirror out of 10 is a 3. Didn't like it. Anyway, next episode is Ascension Part 1. See, get it? It's called Ascension because the main villain's Ascensia. We didn't actually see anyone ascend and meet the koala. What is he smiling at me? What does he know? Sorry. But anyway. So this is when things start to go down because the Ascensia shows up and attacks Voyager, and they're barely getting out of alive. And so, but it's interesting because let me backtrack a bit because the episode starts with actually some good character beats because Jellicoe, it seems like Jellicoe's purpose to always be like, whenever Janeway wants something, he's like, no, we can't do it. We can't help you. You got to come back. You had enough and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm still fuzzy on the chain of command. Why is it that he has so much power over her? But anyway, because she's an admiral. But anyway, I guess you could say, well, she's a vice admiral. But still, I don't care. But anyway, Jellicoe orders that the Voyager return and the Protostar return to Earth, and that the Starfleet will take over, returning the Protostar to where it needs to go. Which that seems again like plot contrivance. It doesn't actually make any sense, and Jellicoe's just got to be a dick to be a dick. But what I think was good character development and good character moment is that the Prodigy crew, that's just what I'm going to calling them, realized that, like, no, we're not going to fight this. And Dahl in particular, it was good character growth for him, who's always like, let's steal shit and let's go against the rules. I actually complained about that in the first half of the season. But this makes me feel better about it because it shows character growth. It's like, no, we did enough, and they're right. We're going to turn it over to more experienced hands who know what they're doing. So that was nice. And also it was nice getting Majel sort of training with Dahl. Like, Dahl shows up for the combat training, and the other other guy in the Nova Squadron was like, what is he doing here? He's just blah blah, and being a dick. And Magellan's like, no, I asked him here because I saw a lot of potential in him. And then he, Dahl again showing how much more mature he's gotten. Was like, I could learn a lot from you, and I'd be really appreciate your help for someone who's so awesome. And he was like, oh, gee, shucks. And that was nice. I like that because, again, it's avoiding the cliche I was worried they were going to do with these characters of having them be the big bullies, that preppy bullies that bullies the other kids around. They got to show them up. But instead of that, it's kind of more the Star Trek spirit that not showing them up, they actually make peace and be like, and admit, no, I could learn from you. You're actually really good at this. And that was really cool. I did really appreciate that. And that did lead to, once they got into the battle with the Ascension, that they went out in these Delta Flyer-esque ship. What do they call them? Nova Flyers? I can't remember. They were created by Tom Paris. But anyway, they went out and the Morn creature, he got injured without speaking. I didn't speak at all, which I'm still happy with. And so they needed a replacement, so they got Dahl. And again, Dahl was being a bit more level-headed out there when he was flying around. And I can't remember if it was this episode or the next one, but I think it was the next one. They realized that the things that are chasing them are programmed with all Starfleet maneuvers and flight patterns, and so that they needed to think outside the box and avoid, do random flight patterns in order to defeat them, which is something that he's really good at, and I did appreciate that. I thought that was a very good use of him. So I quite liked this episode. It was pretty intense, had a character development. So my rating for Ascension Part 1 is an 8, extremely good. So next we'll get into the next episode, Ascension Part 2. And by the way, at the end of Part 1, they revealed that Wesley Crusher was being held captive by Ascensia, which is why she knows how to do all this weird time stuff, like she's building a fleet super fast at back on the planet, and because she is able to harness Wesley's knowledge or powers and gain all this information on how to do it. I do like they're using Wesley more. I do like how they use them in the season, which I'll get to more later on. So anyway, we get a continued battle with them where she creates this weapon that creates this area where people get really old, and we see that the commander gets caught in that and he gets super old. And they, they don't know what to do about it. And as Zero's body is falling apart, and Jankum was going to create him a new one, but they ask, Zero asks Jankum to do it right away, so Zero can go in to the area, because someone needs to go in that area where people grow old instantly, because Zero is different and non-corporeal, so Zeros can grow old as much as they want to without that affecting them, but that would affect their current body. But that's why they asked Jankum Pod to create a different body for them. And so they go in to do that. Well, meanwhile, the Protostar risks itself to, help create a diversion, help get the stop Ascensia from doing whatever it is she's doing. And they manage to do that, and they defeat her and, save the day. But Ascensia is like, now I learned that Starfleet's not going to help them, because that's another thing. When Janeway called for help, Jellicoe's like, we have no help to give you. Of course, he's so useless. But anyway, so she's like, now I know how to defeat them or whatever, and I can exploit that weakness. So she returns back to the planet, so she's still a threat. But they managed to fend her off and save Voyager, and Zero returns with their new body, and it looks just like the old one. I was like, come on. That's just the way to maintain continuity. Although, this one apparently is more enhanced because Zero can actually feel things and have senses, unlike the other bodies. So, okay, that's fine. But no, it was a pretty good episode. I did enjoy it, so my rating for Ascension Part 2 is an 8, extremely good. So, get into episode 17, Brink, where I guess they're pushed to the brink, where they go to the planet to try to save Wesley and save Solom is the name of the planet. Anyway, they go there to try to save Wesley and Lutheran. I always used to call him Evil Dude, but he's not evil this season. But Gwen's father. But anyway, they go there to save both of them, and Janeway thankfully is wise and lets the Prodigy crew go down to do it because, well, they came up with the excuse because they're technically not in Starfleet, therefore they can have deniability, which is just a plot convenience to get them down to the planet. But I'm fine with that. But once they're there, Gwen comes up with a plan to split the team in half, where half go to rescue Lutheran, and the other half go to rescue Wesley. And at first, Dahl is like, no, we need to stick together. That's what Wesley said. And Gwen was like, no, this is because we need to do these two things at once, and this is what we need to do. Trust me. And Dahl, again, being showing some great character growth and getting away from being arrogant. It's like, I trust you, Gwen. I trust you more than anything, so I'll do it. So they do it. They go rescue Lutheran, and it seems very easy. Apparently, all too easy. Is it too easy? But anyway, so Gwen and all them go to rescue Wesley, and Wesley is like, oh yeah, you're here, I've been waiting for you. And then he takes the thing off, and it reveals that this is all part of a plan that he got captured on purpose in order to give Ascension this technology, because he needed her in order to create the wormholes so that they could use it to send the Protostar back in time. Now, she's creating these wormhole and stuff in order to destroy the Federation, and if she succeeds, she will do just that and destroy Starfleet. So, here's my question. Wouldn't there be an easier way to create a wormhole that didn't involve giving dangerous technology to a tyrant who wants to destroy the Starfleet and who's going to enslave everyone on the planet of Solm? But shouldn't there be there's an infinite amount of planets out there? Space is vast. Couldn't Wesley find some other way to create wormhole technology that wasn't so dangerous? But I guess we wouldn't have a plot then if that happened. Anyway, so they rescue Wesley and they get out of the building. Wesley's like, oh yeah, where are those other people? And, the guy with the spiky hair and whatnot. And Gwen's like, no, we split up so they could rescue Solomon. He's like, no, I told you not to split up. They're like, oh, I didn't think you meant all the time, because we needed to do these two things at once. And they're like, no, Lutheran would have been fine once you sent the Protostar back in time. It's totally useless. You ruined everything. Now, another question. So, towards the end, jumping ahead a little bit, towards the end of the season, Wesley tells Dal, when Dal's like, oh, this is why you wanted us to stay together, so they could be on the, when they're sending the Protostar back. And he's like, no, that's yet to come. There's greater, more wonderful things. So, here's my question. Does Wesley expect them to stay together, like literally, like stay in the same room for like years? Like, are they supposed to stay like exactly together, like for the rest of their lives? I mean, one would think that they can't always be literally together in the same room or the same place at the exact same time for the rest of their lives. And so why would he expect them to do that? Why would he expect them to literally stay together during this mission when he wants them because there's plenty of times, by the way, between when they met Wesley and this episode where they did separate and they weren't literally together all the time. And it's kind of ridiculous for him to expect them to always be together, but whatever. Maybe, I know some people are going to say I'm being too nitpicky, and I don't know. Anyway, yeah, they show up with Luther and are like, oh, see, we rescued them, it's all good. But they were being followed by Ascension and their forces, and she arrests them all and captures them. And Wesley's like, oh, I can't, I'm not predicting this, I have no idea what it's going to happen. Okay, so let's say that they didn't split up. Let's say that the doll and the other people were still waiting for Wesley and Gwen when they got out. Would that mean that Ascension wouldn't still be waiting there with all those guards? Because it seems like they would. It seems like that she knew that they would come to rescue Wesley, so it doesn't seem like it would actually make any difference. So why is Wesley all acting like everything's different now and that Gwen totally fucked up and now he can't see anything? That actually doesn't really make sense. Really? But I do appreciate what they were trying to do. This is getting back to the main theme of the season, with Gwen making a huge mistake and then things not turning out how they planned, but now they have to try to readjust and go with it. But yeah, we get the cool thing where I actually like this a lot, where Gwen gives like Dahl a signal, who gets the transporter thing out and beams Wesley and Lutheran back on the Protostar. Now, maybe I missed something, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. If maybe perhaps I missed a line of dialogue. But why didn't they all beam up? I mean, was there some dialogue saying that the transporter could only transport 2 people at a time? Because if there was, I missed that, or I don't remember that. Or because I thought they were all going to beam up together. So why did they only beam 2 of them up? I was really confused by this. So maybe I missed something. I'm open to that. But anyway, so my rating for Brink out of 10 is a 7, because it was an interesting, there's flaws aside, it was an interesting character story for Gwen and Dahl, and yeah, they kind of like that. So then we get into episode 18, Touch of Grey. So the Prodigy crew are captured and taken prisoner by Ascension, but Wesley beams on board. And we start out with a nice cold open with Chakotay and Janeway reminiscing and about their old time on Voyager and how, it's great to be there. And I love that. I think that was a great scene. And then Wesley beams up and he's acting like, oh no, how are we going to fix all this? And people are saying, so apparently the showrunners are saying that they kind of based his character off of Doctor Who, like the eccentric way that he is acting and everything. I haven't seen Doctor Who, so never will, never did, so I wouldn't know. But okay, I mean, I'll take their word for it. But I do think it works for Wesley's character. I think it makes sense that I totally buy him as this quirky, out of control, sort of mind always wandering and being like silly and whatnot, because that does seem to be in his character, because he's been off being a traveler for like so many decades and being involved in out of space time and whatnot. I think this is a good development, and plus it just so fits Will Wheaton. Like, and that's probably why he does such a good voice acting job with this, that I can buy it. I can go with it. I dig it. But anyway, so Chakotay, Janeway, and the Doctor getting again the Voyager trio involved. I was almost hoping to see more characters from Voyager show up, but 3's enough, I suppose. But anyway, so they beam down with Wesley, and so I guess these are the legacy team, you could even call it. And so they beam down. Not beam down, they go in a shuttle, but whatever. They go down to the planet to attempt a rescue mission because Ascension asked for Janeway in exchange for the cadets, and they all know it's a trap, so they go down there with the plan to try to rescue the Prodigy crew, and they get thrown in like a gladiator dungeon type thing where Ascension is going to feed them to one of those Langoliers. What are they called? Are they called the Loom or the Loon or something like that? I don't know. I'll still call them the Langoliers. Anyway, so they're so Ascension is acting like a Bond villain instead of simply just killing them. She has to. It's like was this Attack of the Clones when they put Obi-Wan and the other Anakin and Padme into like this arena type thing to have these arena monsters kill them instead of just shooting them with a blaster. But whatever. Oh god, I don't know. It's whatever. So it is a cartoon, so it's fine. So, but something I have more of an issue with is the loon or whatever the hell it was, the Langolier, and how it's a loom. Okay, it's I don't know. I still don't like them, and I still think it's a really dumb concept. And the fact that they were like, they captured it and it's lonely and it just wants to escape. I'm like, aren't these interdimensional beings that can travel through different dimensions? Why is it trapped by a fucking wall? I don't know. Did they say it was injured? But even so, it's like, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they're saying she used her futuristic technology, which she seemed to acquire pretty fucking easily, by the way. Maybe she used that to trap it there. But I'm still not buying it. And anyway, if she knows of the looms and knows that their universe is going to disintegrate if she is successful, then I don't know, because she's evil and crazy, I suppose. Anyway, so I thought this was goofy. I didn't really like this scene at all, but I did like how they tricked Ascension where the Doctor was pretending to be Janeway. And I like how they didn't include this into the audience. They actually had Janeway off screen, just had Chakotay and Wesley together trying to find a way in, and then Janeway shows up to talk to Ascension, and then she kills Janeway, and then you see the real Janeway show up with Chakotay and Wesley. And they're like, I hope the Doctor's plan is going to work. And I was like, so the Doctor's actually, so this is a good use of the Doctor, and I'm glad they're not making him the ridiculous, outrageous Mary Sue that he was in season 7 of Voyager. This is actually a good use of the Doctor, and I do appreciate it. So they, they managed to, like, Zero can telepathically communicate with Janeway, and they get a plan to bust open the thing for the loom to get out, and so that the others can get out and they escape, and yay, everything is so they escape Ascension and make it back to the ship. So it's pretty exciting, a decent episode. So my rating for Touch of Grey is a 7. So then we get into the 2-part finale, Ouroboros, starting with Ouroboros Part 1. I do have to admit that with the title of Ouroboros, it made me think of Loki. So I probably foolishly was expecting something as like mind blowing and something that, well, forgetting Loki for the moment, just the title Ouroboros makes me think that this is going to connect back to the start of the season and everything's going to be an interesting like loop and there's going to be this great revelation at the end. But there isn't. Now, granted, Ouroboros might refer to the fact that they, in the next part, they get the Protostar to go back and everything starts over again. But I was expecting more of that. Maybe I'm a victim of my own expectations, but I was expecting something more. And by the way, speaking of time loops, Wesley keeps referring to this paradox as a loop, but it's not really a loop, is it? But anyway, I'll get more on the paradox later. So they have this big fight scene where Zero, all the science minds like Zero and Magell, and God, who else is there? Wesley, yeah. Anyway, they're like trying to figure out a way. Was Jenkinpod with them, or did he get on the planet? I thought maybe he was with them. I can't remember. But anyway, they're on the ship trying to figure out a way to get the tech, get the technobabble thingy to work, but they need them in order to redirect the tech to get the technobabble thingy to on the planet to realign and be just right in order for them to do the technobabble thingy in orbit in order to get the wormhole working, and so that Ascension can't destroy the Federation, and so that they can use it to go back to get the Protostar to go back to the right time. So they have an away team beam down to the planet with Gwen and Dahl and what's his face, Murph. And so they have to fight the bad guys, and they have Gwen goes 1-to-1 against Ascension, where no, Jacob Pod was on the planet. That's right, because he was with them on the thingy. He went with Murph and Dahl to go up to the tower where they need to fix the thingy, and there was that those big mechanical monster thingies were attacking, and Murph was going against that, which I did like that. I did think that was pretty suspenseful, and I did enjoy seeing Murph sort of fight that thing. And meanwhile, Jenkins Pod and Dahl go to fix the thing, but then the cable gets loose, so Dahl has to climb to the very top in order to fix it, and he falls. In order to get it together. I actually thought they were going to kill him off. I thought, holy shit, they're going to have him sacrifice himself, but then Murph catches him. Silly for me to think that, I know, but I actually did. But anyway, it was exciting. I really liked the sequence, and then Ascension does beat Gwen in hand-to-hand combat, but then all the other whatchamacallit, the people from this planet, their species, I can't remember what they're called, but they show up and they use I never understood what their weird where their heads glow thing. I never really understood that clearly, but they use that to give Gwen all this power. They put all the power onto her, and she's able to defeat Ascension, which is really cool. I did really enjoy that, and they get the tech thing to work at the right time, so Wesley and Zero and all them on the ship can tech the tech, and get it to work and open the portal, and yay, everything's good. But I don't think I've talked yet about Magell and Zero, how they're having a thing going on, which I love. I think that really work. So this is a really exciting episode. So yeah, I think I am going to go as far as to give Ouroboros a 9 out of 10. And I haven't gotten into the flaws yet and what really irks me about this whole thing, but let's get about that in Ouroboros Part 2. So, this is when they go to return the Protostar to the timeline, but the Langoliers, or the Loom, are in the way, and they're like, oh, we'll never be able to defeat them, but they work together and they use their phasers to get through. Okay, so alright, so hologram Janeway is like really pissy, acting really upset, and they figure out it's because she's going to be wiped, and she's going to have to be erased in order for the Protostar to be set back right again. But it turns out that Chakotay came up with a plan to save her program so that they can still have her and have a different version of that Janeway hologram be there in order to set everything right. So they send the Protostar back in time. We get this lovely little sequence of it flies through the stuff of season 1 happening to show that everything's set right again. And so the Loom, the Langoliers, all disappear and they go back to wherever the hell they came from because the timeline's set right. Alright, so now let's get into this. I'm sorry, but this whole time shenanigans make zero sense. So here's my first question. They sent the Protostar back in time and they fixed everything. So everything's back in time. Gwen's fine. Everything happens the way it did. So here's my question. They changed what is the name of that planet again? The one that Olam, I believe, where Gwen is from. So they changed it so that Gwen's father, what's his face, Lutheran or whatever, is like a nice guy now, and he's going to be the leader, and they're going to have peace with Starfleet instead of being at war, and it's going to save their planet. And even the younger version of Ascension is like hated the older version of Ascension, so she's clearly not going to become that person anymore because she saw the follies of that. So why is the timeline exactly the same as it was? Why is it reset when they made that major difference in Olam? So particularly with the character of Lutheran, because he went back in time with the Protostar in order to help destroy Starfleet, and he created Gwen to that end. And those events are vital for the Prodigy crew finding the Protostar, and not to mention Gwen being created. So if they change the future to where Lutheran is now a good guy and is not going to want to destroy the Starfleet, then he never travels back in time. And so why is the future restored again? Like, how can all those events we saw in season 1 occur again if they totally changed the timeline on that planet? Why do I keep forgetting the name of the planet? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Why? It doesn't. That doesn't make any sense. So, Solemn. Okay, Solemn's the name of the planet. But anyway, because shouldn't that still be a paradox? Shouldn't those Langoliers still be eating away at the thing? Because there's. I mean, what happens to the future version of this Ascension? Because now the timeline's changed, where that the younger version is never going to become that older version, so there's not going to be evil. So doesn't that create another paradox that the evil version's still there? And doesn't that create a paradox that how that the Lutheran never goes back to actually create this thing? Shouldn't that nothing actually be restored? And the whole... So I'm sorry, but I'm going to reiterate what I said in my first review of part 1 of the season. It makes no sense. This whole paradox thing doesn't make any sense in the first place. From the way time travel always works in Star Trek, like yesterday's Enterprise, when they changed the timeline, it should have instantly changed. And Gwen should have flashed out of existence and no one should have known she even existed. I know they tried to say, oh, but the wormhole is connecting the two realities, but that actually doesn't make any sense, and it's never been how it works. Like, for example, the rift in yesterday's Enterprise was still open the whole time. You could say, well, no, it's a different kind of rift, but it doesn't make any sense either, any way you slice it, because why was she phasing out then, and why is it okay that they completely changed the course of Solemn? And how can that feature still happen? Like because when Chakotay takes the Protostar into the future and goes to future Solemn, he should find like a bunch of nice guys who are already friends with the Starfleet and be like, hey, nice to meet you. So none of this, I don't know. I know, because okay, so they got the Protostar back where it belongs, so that Chakotay doesn't need to send it there. So okay, fine, but that creates a paradox that they changed Solemn. Anyway, so you could say, oh well, maybe the evil Lutheran or Lithrian or whatever you call him, Rithron, whatever his name is, the evil guy from season 1 is still there in that timeline because he came from the future. So it's like if someone travels back in the past and they change the past so the future never happens, they still exist, but now they're stuck in a different timeline. Kind of like Marty in Back to the Future Part 2, where his future was completely changed, or present was completely changed, but the him that left from that alternate timeline still exists. So you could say that that Lutheran evil guy he's from that alternate timeline, but he's still in the past of the proper timeline in order to get everything right. Here's the problem with that line of thinking, though. If that's what you're thinking, let me shatter that for you. Here's the problem with that. Why wasn't the same true for Gwen? If that was the case. If all you got to do is, someone's from an alternate future that no longer exists, but they're now in our present, so they still exist. That should have been true for Gwen when she started blinking out of existence. It shouldn't have affected her at all, because she's from a different alternate timeline. The fact that her past or her future was changed shouldn't affect her at all, but instead it created a paradox. So if her existing creates a paradox, then why doesn't Luthrium, or whatever the hell his name is, John Noble, why is him existing in the past and being evil and creating Gwen, how does that not create a paradox? I don't know. I look forward, or actually no, I don't look forward. I kind of dread this, but I know it's going to happen. To comments trying to say like, Mark, you're all wrong. You totally misunderstand it. You totally left this out. You're being silly. Let me explain it to you. And so I guess I'm kind of looking forward to hearing all the weak excuses people come up with to try to explain this away. Because I'm sorry, alright, so if someone does come up with a really good explanation to try to explain this, I'll be open to hear it, but I seriously doubt there is one. I think this is some of the most sloppy time travel logic, not just in Star Trek, in any, movie and stuff, like Looper, or that stupid thing with Ryan Reynolds that came out a couple of years ago. I think this time travel logic is kind of worse, to be honest, because it involves Langoliers that dead universes, when really the kind of change that was made that made this paradox was kind of changes that happen in Star Trek all the time, and Star Trek's perfectly fine. It just blinks and it's gone. And it shouldn't kill the universe and have these loom try to eat it up. So yeah, I'm sorry, but that really hurts the whole season for me. Now, as I talked about in the top of my video, I don't think the season sucks. It doesn't ruin the season for me. And I don't think these episodes suck because of that, by the way. But, I do have to do a lot of suspension of disbelief, a lot of hand waving, and so I do strike that against it. But anyway, let's do the hand waving. We get good character beats. It's good. It was actually kind of touching to see them go through the events of season 1 and have them and everyone gets out on board, and they manage to save the day. And then they get back to Starfleet Academy, and we see Wesley reunite with her mother, which was a great scene. So happy that they did this. And Beverly introduces Wesley to his young brothers, and I love that. And apparently, I've read some interviews that they actually had, when they decided they wanted to use Wesley, they actually had a talk with Terry Matalas and Picard, which apparently they were writing this at the same time he was writing season 2 of Picard, let alone season 3. And so Terry Matalas had to ask permission to use Wesley in season 2 of Picard because they knew that Prodigy was going to use him. It's funny that because season 2 of Picard came out, it feels like forever ago, but I guess it shows how long ago that they've been working on this season. And so that's why Wesley only had that brief cameos, because they didn't, and they touched base to make sure that, they weren't being inconsistent. They wanted to stay consistent with what they were doing with Wesley in this season, which I think they were. I just hate that whole stupid thing with the Travelers being like Gary 7 whatever. But I guess, Terry Matalas also told them about their plans for season 3 and to create, with Jack Crusher, and so they incorporated that into this, which I really appreciated. I do really like that. I think that was great. Speaking of being in sync with Star Trek Picard, we get the next sequence of the attack on Mars happening, which when they mentioned the Romulan evacuation earlier in the season, I was thinking, wonder if they're going to touch on that attack on Mars, because that was happening pretty much around the same time as the Romulan evacuation. And they do. And I think this was handled very well. It was reminiscent of that one short track, which is my personal favorite short track. A lot of people say Calypso. I actually like this one better. That was setting up for Star Trek Picard. It was reminiscent of that because it was about these two young girl students who were feuding, but then they saw the attack happening and they sort of came together. And it's kind of similar because everyone was at Starfleet Academy, was watching, and they all sort of bonded together. And so we start to get the dystopian version of Starfleet that was portrayed in Picard. And again, I saw an interview with the creators of Prodigy, and they talked about how they didn't want to, be out of sync because they realized the time frame they're about to get into when this attack is supposed to happen, and so they wanted to remain consistent with Picard, but they also wanted to remain hopeful. And I think this was a really good compromise. This is a really good way to do it, that they did acknowledge it. They didn't try to pretend it didn't happen, but they found a way for there to still be a ray of hope, that even though Starfleet was like, we have to retract and we can't really do much exploring and we're going to get very sort of isolationist, Angelico seems like be the right person to do this. And suddenly I told Picard and he wasn't happy about it. So is this like, because I can't remember, we got some flashback in Picard season 1 when he heard about the Starfleet retracting, and he got all pissy and he was like, and he resigned. And I wonder if this is the meeting they're talking about. But anyway, Janeway seemed to pull some string or call in some favors, which I wanted to know who gave her these favors. Was it Admiral Tuvok? I don't know. But she called in some favors and managed to get convince them to let a group of cadets that, except for Magel, hadn't really even joined the academy yet, and instantly promote them to ensigns and put them in command of the starship, to put a cadet who barely even started the academy, who just got promoted to ensign ahead, and give her the command of the starship. Now, this gave me vibes of Star Trek 2009, where they made Kirk went straight from cadet to captain. But this, unlike Star Trek 2009, which was supposed to be a serious movie, Prodigy is a cartoon. So I am willing to give it more leeway in that regard. And also, like, they need to find a way to get the main characters in charge of their own ship and be on the Protostar again. So, why not? Whatever. Hand wave, I'm fine. As I say, it is a cartoon, so I'm more willing to go with it. But I really did like how they had the two chairs for the captain and the first officer, and Dahl's like, oh yes, a good first officer needs to be this, and so everyone's expecting him to say, Quinn, I want you to be my first officer, but he says, I'm going to be your first officer, which was surprising, and I think that was a really great character beat for him. It shows that he's learning humility, he's learning to trust others. Gwen kind of proved herself, like with the whole thing with the stupid sailing ship and whatnot. Was proving herself a bit more, even, and also willing to forgive her for making the mistake of splitting them up, and giving her a shot at command, and he would be the willing first officer, and he would be willing to learn from her. Yeah, that was very touching, and I did really like that, and I liked seeing them all in their new uniforms. How many different fucking uniforms is Starfleet gonna have? Or are these the same ones that were in Picard, in the flashbacks of Picard? But anyway, I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. It's like, these modern Trek has made so many different uniforms. But anyway, I thought that was a great way to end the season. So my rating for Ouroboros Part 2. Okay, I'm going to give it an 8. Which I think I'm being extremely generous for giving it an 8. Because the time travel logic in it is atrocious. But, you know, that's more of a whole season kind of thing, rather than, you know, it's just, this is the episode that resolves everything. But I do like, so looking at this episode and judging it on its own merits, I love the character stories that they involve, and it was very exciting, the way they resolved everything. Seeing I love the way they used Wesley this season. I love the character growth that Dahl and Gwen had this season, and I think this is a very fitting in. So, yeah. Anyway, my rating for Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 as a whole is also going to be an 8. Extremely good. And again, I think I'm being a bit generous by giving it an 8, considering how atrocious the time travel logic was. I really do think this is up there with the worst of it, like past tense. Although I love past tense. But in that case, that was amazing, and had me look past the time travel logic, where this one, I don't know, it's just a bit harder for me to look past it, since the Loom, the Langoliers things are a major part of the season. I just can't buy them, and I think they're silly and don't make any sense whatsoever. But once I hand wave that away and go with it, it was a very exciting season. I did really enjoy it. I think there was great character growth for all the characters. It went on a really interesting journey. I don't think it was as great as it could have been. Like, I was actually expecting something a bit more from it. But I love the way they use Wesley. I love seeing Chakotay and Janeway reunite. And again, the having Majel was a great addition to the cast, and having that little romance between her and Zero was great. And again, the character development of Dull and Gwen was just it was fabulous, and even Murph felt like more of a real character. But now we have that little puffy Tribble to be the merchandising opportunity of the show. But anyway, it's a kid's show. You gotta have something cute and fluffy for the kiddies. That's fine. So yeah, I'll give this an 8. I don't misunderstand all my complaining. I still really enjoyed Prodigy. I still love this show, and I still really, really want them to renew it for season 3. I'm still hoping that Netflix renews, and I hope they make a statement either way. I hope it's just not left in the air. Even if they choose not to continue, I hope they release a statement letting us know that this sucks. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully, I hear that the numbers are doing pretty good. Fairly good for the show so far. So, fingers crossed. Hopefully this show does good enough for Netflix to want to greenlight another season. Because, yeah, they set up. This would be a good end for the show if it does have to end, to be fair. But they set up an interesting scenario for an interesting season. And I love these characters, and I think it would be a great tragedy, a great disservice if this show only got 2 seasons. Even if they are super long seasons compared to the other modern Trek shows, it's more in line with what classic Trek used to do. But even so, I think it deserves more than 2 seasons. I would love to see more than 2 seasons. I think the creator said they had a 5-season plan. So I would love for that to be fulfilled, but we'll see. I think this show is solid. Definitely want to see more of it. So let's save Star Trek Prodigy. Let's hope that Netflix does the right thing. So anyway, that is it for my review of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, Part 2. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel as I continue to cover Star Trek Next Generation, 1 episode at a time, currently in Season 5 of TNG, and also covering House of the Dragon and many other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.